Welcome to The Explainer. Have you looked at your bank account lately and just thought, am I losing my mind? You walk into the grocery store, grab a few basic items, and boom, you're out $80. Yet you turn on the news and all these experts are telling you the stock market is booming and everything is perfectly fine. Well, today, we are going to break down exactly how to navigate economic downturns. We're covering everything from those everyday stock market dips that make us sweat, all the way down to full-blown systemic collapses. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the silent lifestyle recession, move into the anatomy of market crashes, and look back at the history of economic bubbles. Then we'll pivot to financial strategies for survival, preparing for total collapse, and finally, building skills and community. Let's dive right in. Section 1, the silent lifestyle recession. To really get started, we've got to validate what everyday workers are actually feeling right now by looking at the true state of the economy.
So, are we in a recession right now? If you ask official economists, they'll point to low unemployment and steady GDP growth of around 2.2% and tell you, hey, we're completely fine. But man, your grocery receipts are probably telling a very different story, aren't they? We are essentially living in two completely different realities.
It basically breaks down like this. You have a technical recession, meaning GDP hasn't dropped for 2 straight quarters, so the system looks healthy on paper. But then you have what's being called a vibe or lifestyle recession. That's the reality where your dollar literally buys less, credit card debt is soaring to levels we haven't seen since 2008, and rent has just completely decoupled from local wages. So why is basic food so ridiculously expensive right now? It really comes down to the math of 3 things. First, global energy prices. When those surge, the fertilizers, tractors, and refrigerated trucks all cost way more. Second, you factor in extreme weather, droughts absolutely wrecking crop and cattle yields. And finally, corporate consolidation. The data shows conglomerates padding their profit margins because, well, they know you can't just decide to stop eating. Combine all that and you get structurally broken household budgets.
30 to 40%. That's a staggeringly high number. It represents the percentage of unhoused adults in major metropolitan areas who are actually employed full-time. Think about that for a second. People are working 40 hours a week and still sleeping in their cars. When median rent passes $2,000 a month, but a typical retail or healthcare worker takes home less than $3,000, the basic math of survival just shatters. One missed shift or a surprise medical bill is all it takes to trigger an eviction.
Section 2, anatomy of market crashes. Let's zoom out a bit and see how this everyday economic pain often stems from larger macroeconomic mechanics. What exactly is a market correction? It's a drop of at least 10% from a recent high. And honestly, it is completely normal. Since 1980, this has happened on average every 1.2 years. It's basically just the stock market realizing things have gotten a bit too expensive and taking a breather to cut back prices. Now, let's break down the 3 degrees of market crashes. We know corrections happen constantly, but a bear market, which is a drop of 20% or more, hits roughly every 4 years and 8 months, and it usually drags things down for about 9.6 months. The huge takeaway from this data, a 9-month bear market isn't some crazy anomaly, it is a mathematical reality. If you invest, you absolutely have to be mentally prepared for your portfolio to sit in the red for a year. Section 3, History of Economic Bubbles. To understand why those massive system-shaking collapses happen, we need a quick history lesson.
Underneath all the complex financial jargon, these massive crashes are almost always driven by irrational human excitement. 1929, 2000, 2008. These dates perfectly highlight what goes wrong when everyone drastically underestimates risk. In 1929, people were literally borrowing money just to buy more stocks. In 2000, everyday investors poured billions into internet companies with zero profits just because they had a .com in their name. In 2008, a massive housing bubble built entirely on bad loans.
90%. Back in 1929, when folks finally woke up and realized stocks were wildly overvalued, panic selling triggered a chain reaction. That bubble bursting caused the market to drop by a terrifying 90%. Companies fired everyone, banks totally collapsed because they'd recklessly lent out depositors' money, and boom, the Great Depression began. AA. That rating highlights the sheer absurdity of 2008. The highest, most pristine, least risky grade possible, AA, was blindly slapped onto toxic, unpayable housing loans. Banks were handing out $500,000 mortgages to unemployed folks with zero income verification, boxing them up,
stamping them AA and selling them off to the world. When those borrowers inevitably defaulted, the global financial system nearly buckled. Section 4. Financial Strategies for Survival. Okay, now that we know how and why things break, let's pivot. How do we take this knowledge and use it to not just survive, but actually build wealth during a crash? There are 3 phases of a crash you need to navigate. First, the euphoria phase. This is when everyone is flying high, maybe buying JPEGs for millions of dollars. That's your cue to save extra cash and reduce your leverage. Pay down that debt. Next is the reckoning phase. This is the punch in the face, where panic sets in. But if you're prepared, you hold firm and dollar cost average, meaning you consistently buy investments at bargain prices. Finally, the phoenix phase. You just wait for the market to rebuild and rise above those past highs, rewarding everyone who stayed the course. The seeds of your fortune are often sown in times of crisis and uncertainty. This quote completely flips our mindset, doesn't it? Historical data proves that if you have extra cash on hand, a stable income, and a diversified index fund, a terrifying crash isn't the end of the world. Actually, it's a massive opportunity. A history of crashes shows us that a bull market almost always follows a bear market. Section 5. Preparing for total collapse. But what if the government's ability to inject magical computer money into the economy actually fails? Let's talk about preparing for a prolonged systemic collapse. When a real shortage hits, nothing is more valuable than food. You've got to systematically step up your storage. Start with 3 days, a basic 72-hour kit for immediate natural disasters. Then build that out to 3 weeks, then a sustained 3 months, and ultimately aim for a 1-year long-term supply. In a true economic collapse, those relief trucks are going to be completely overwhelmed. Self-reliance is essential. Now, you can't just think of food as calories. You have to think about time and space. Take canned soup, for example. It's great, but it lasts maybe 2 to 5 years, and it is incredibly bulky and heavy. Compare that to freeze-dried food. It retains its nutrients for decades, it's super lightweight, and it takes up a fraction of the space. Remember, you have to prep for a disaster that could outlast a decade-long depression, making portability and shelf life absolutely critical. If fiat currency ever becomes truly worthless, we are going straight back to bartering. Highly tradable survival commodities like germinating seeds, salt, instant coffee, freeze-dried foods, bouillon cubes, alcohol, sugar, and honey, these literally become the new gold. Someone might reject $1,000 of useless paper cash for a pair of boots, but they will absolutely trade you for some butter powder or coffee. Start stockpiling these slowly, adding just a little bit every payday. Section 6. Building skills and community. Finally, let's explore the absolute strongest, most unbreakable safety net you can possibly build. The best part about this final strategy, it requires zero storage space, and nobody can ever confiscate it from you. Step 1. Cultivate personal, off-grid skills like foraging or first aid. In a post-collapse society, people aren't scrambling for software developers. They need someone who can preserve food or purify water. Step 2. Put that knowledge into practice to build immense mental stability and confidence. And step 3, find like-minded people to form a mutual assistance group. Surviving a true collapse isn't about hunkering down alone in a bunker. It's about being incredibly useful and banding together with a resilient community. If your day job disappears tomorrow, what unique skill do you bring to the table to ensure your own survival? I'm going to leave you with that vital question to ponder. Because whether we're facing a silent lifestyle recession that squeezes your wallet, a terrifying stock market crash, or a total systemic collapse, your ultimate preparedness relies entirely on what you can do when the system stops doing it for you. So, what is your skill? Start building it today. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.